Welcome back to the Hardware Unbox podcast for episode 112. We're going to briefly have a chat about YouTube changing things again, potentially for the better, potentially for the worse. And then a bit of a chat about the GPU market once again, because Steve has actually tested the RX 9050. So we'll chat about that. We're going to look at the whole AMD review process for this one, or AMD potentially trying to block reviews or at least not provide review samples. And then our I guess we're a bit horrified about the current state of GPU pricing and how things have gone. So a few interesting comparisons between current Radeon prices and current GeForce prices towards the end. So let's get into it. So kicking off this podcast with a discussion on something that was actually requested by someone in our Discord community. So if you sign up and you become a Patreon member, you get the podcast channel in our Discord where you can get annoyed at whatever our opinions are on the podcast, but also occasionally suggest topics. And so this person wanted us to have a bit of a chat about the updates to YouTube and the public view counter changes, because in the past we've made a couple of episodes about the YouTube platform. I think we talked about how there were some weird things going on with views a while back, potentially related to ad blocking and that sort of thing. And we just like to talk about, being YouTube creators, what our thoughts are on the latest YouTube changes. So we saw this week that YouTube is going to change the way that they count views. I think they're saying they're going to count it from when the very first frame is played. So if you just happen to watch that very first frame, hey, we get a view on our videos. This is to align YouTube views between the long form videos, the stuff that we normally make, with the shorts and other stuff that YouTube offers. They're keeping the original metric called engaged views, which I think used to count a view as if you'd watched the first 30 seconds. Not 100% sure about that. But essentially they've made this change, which we expect, I guess, is going to make our view count go up. So I'm feeling pretty happy about that. I'm going to get a nice hit of dopamine from having our view count being higher than it was.
It's better than lower. Normally they only do lower, so higher is a special treat.
Yeah, that's right. It's an interesting one. I'm not quite sure why they made this change, why they felt that YouTube needed a new type of view count. Like, I guess, did you always think that the view count is fine as it is? Or did you think, wow, no, they actually should be counting things from the very first second that you watch the video?
I haven't put too much thought into what makes the most sense. At least a few seconds would make the most sense, right? In case someone accidentally clicked on it and then clicked back or clicked away or whatever. But whether it's the first few seconds, the first 30, not sure. Don't know what makes the most sense there.
Yeah, I think that the main issue that a lot of people have brought up relating to this is that accidental view thing that you were sort of saying. Because I think this may even count views as if you're just scrolling through the feed, and sometimes videos auto play, or you might hover over a thumbnail and it will start playing the video briefly. Are those views going to be counted? Because someone might not actually be watching the video, but they're that's going to be counted in our metrics as a view. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, I agree. I think you should, ideally something like 30 seconds would probably make the most sense to count for a view. Having said that, I guess it kind of depends on how long the video is as well. But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, the 30-second thing, it seems like it was maybe a little arbitrary to begin with, because if you're making like a 20-minute video or something and someone watches the first 30 seconds and then they're like, I've had enough of this. Is that an actual view? Like, have they really viewed the video, or have they sort of clicked away after not wanting to watch the rest of it?
Yeah, opposed to say a 60-second, 90-second skit type video. Not sure what the right answer is there, but I was happy with the way they were doing it and have done so for as long as I'm aware. So to change it now, a little bit weird.
Yeah, I think it's maybe YouTube are feeling the pressure with all the other platforms. So like TikTok, Instagram, which have used this sort of what I would class as a more dodgy way of counting views, where it's just sort of anyone, even in passing, just remotely sees even a small part of your video, it's counted as a view. And so if YouTube views are sort of lower than their competing platforms for the same sort of engagement, I guess, then they might feel the pressure to change it to this sort of, I don't know, first frame metric that you would sort of call it. But it's interesting that for like view, in terms of AdSense and all that sort of thing, they're not even using this new metric. They're not like, hey, your view count's going to go up, therefore your AdSense is going to go up. they're still using the old engaged views metric to calculate things like AdSense, or at least to deliver ads. And obviously with like mid-rolls and stuff, that's watching the first frame's irrelevant for a mid-roll. You actually have to watch into the video. So it's supposedly not going to change anything about the monetization of the platform, but just as like a feel good numbers go up, maybe it's for investors or some sort of thing in that sense. And I believe they also changed the partner program recently, didn't they, to make it harder to
get in, and you had to get a certain amount of views to actually get paid in a certain window. I don't know what the exact details were there, but it definitely hurt smaller channels. It made it much more difficult for smaller channels to actually make any kind of money on YouTube, at least through AdSense.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for the smaller channels that are just starting out. I think they're still going off the qualified watch hours and that sort of thing. So you do need people to watch your videos, which makes it hard for people who do make those sort of sketch type videos that are smaller and shorter to get the number of watch hours that is required. But really, I mean, this is going to just devalue the view, I think, in terms of like what it actually means. Kind of like the subscriber count. Like we have 1 million subscribers on the Hardware Unboxed channel, but that doesn't really mean all that much on the platform. YouTube doesn't use it really to determine whether they should serve videos to you or not. It's largely based on things like watch time, click-through rate, and even views is not a huge indicator. A lot of the metrics that they sort of show us as being the most important metrics are the watch time stuff, click through, engagement, that sort of thing, as opposed to just how many views the video is getting. But hopefully, I think you talked about this on a previous podcast, this issue of like AI slop that is currently plaguing YouTube, where there's just these channels that are just pumping out the worst videos. They're just clearly made by AI. They've got an AI thumbnail. And if you could have this sort of view count being inflated by people that just like stumble across the video or watch like a second of it and then click away, that's going to make those AI slop videos, I would think, appear a bit more like legitimate almost. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I did see a few people suggesting that this is done purely to like prop up the AI videos. I don't really know why YouTube would be wanting to do that, like why they would make such a radical change to favor or like prop up AI videos. I'm not saying they're not doing that. I just don't understand the reason for why they would do that. I heard people complaining about that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either, especially with the way that YouTube has been shifting away from views as a means to, deal with the algorithm or show you videos or AdSense or whatever. And it's sort of, they're quite clear in a lot of what they say, don't use clickbait that is just going to get people to click on a video and then click away, because that's going to hurt your watch time. It's going to, you might get a high click-through rate, but then you'll have low watch time, so YouTube won't push the video. And so you have to have at least some sort of honesty in what you're packaging the video as. But to then go, well, now we're going to just like inflate everyone's views and sort of benefit those channels in that way, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's going to hurt as well the partner, the in-stream ads side of things with, the view count's not going to be as relevant for, I guess, those partnership deals, and especially for deals which, and we don't necessarily do these specific deals, but there are deals where, the advertiser at the end of the day pays based on the final view count. We tend to just do other sorts of deals. But, if you suddenly had a deal for like 100,000 views and now your video has been given 200,000 views because of YouTube changing the way that views are counted, not great for the advertisers, I wouldn't have thought. They're probably not going to be super happy with that. But then, that the old metric is still there.
I guess it also depends if it's applied universally, then just everyone gets let's say a certain percentage bump, but it depends whether it can be exploited, and other channels are seeing much larger spikes than other channels.
Yeah, that's right. You want it to be, I think it largely will be relatively even, because if you're just flicking, like if what is counting are people accidentally clicking on videos or getting videos auto-played to them, you'd think that would probably apply across the board to everyone. There wouldn't be some channels which, a lot of people watch the first 10 seconds of, but then don't watch the rest of it. But then other channels, that doesn't happen. So anyway, it was just an interesting story to sort of wake up one morning and be like, hey, YouTube is actually changing one of these things. And it feels like a lot of the changes that YouTube makes are generally not something that you sort of look at and go, wow, that's really improving the experience for people.
It's very rare in my experience that YouTube makes a challenge that either benefits the people uploading content to the platform or the people who are viewing the content on the platform. They find a way to make changes that benefit neither of those people. So basically the people that use YouTube essentially in one way or another, it's either just why or that makes it worse for everyone. Please don't do that. So, I mean, I guess they're just being true to form then.
Yeah, I think that the last time this sort of happened was the removal of the dislike counter, right? It was sort of a really good way to judge the credibility of a video, especially for things like tutorials or how to advice. And if you went to a video and you sort of saw like a heavy dislike count or whatever, you'd be like, that's a bit dodgy. It would also help with that, help out those AI slop channels from being just mass disliked. But they got rid of that for no real reason. And just recently as well, they got rid of it, an easy way to view it in the YouTube studio for creators. So the sort of
Yeah, that's right.
the default metrics that we see, they replaced it with the AdSense revenue that you're making on the video. So they're like, don't care about your like ratio and how much people actually enjoyed watching your video. Just care about the money you're making on each video. Thanks. That'd be nice.
Yeah, they're really incentivizing people to just get views at all costs. And it doesn't really matter whether you're upsetting the people watching the video or not, just go and get the views.
Mm. Yes. So it'd be nice to see YouTube for once make a change that everyone sits back and is like, that was a great change. We're all super happy that they made this change. But all the stuff that I guess maybe benefits people, things like making your YouTube algorithm more relevant to you. And I think that has changed over time. It used to be maybe a couple of years ago really bad, like just a lot of stuff I wasn't interested in. It feels like that has improved a bit, but they never really talk about that stuff. They're not like, we're going to make recommendations more relevant for you. The only things they ever talk about are things like, we're going to inflate view counts for no reason and delete the dislike button because apparently creators' mental health suffers from dislikes or something. So, whatever.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the views are changed when this comes into effect. It's only what was the date? It's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the 24th of August. And it was weird as well
Okay.
that they're not applying any changes retroactively. So they're not going back and sort of saying, did anyone click on this video and watch the first second? It's only views counted from that date. So all the old videos are going to have
Yes.
the old numbers and all the
It's
new videos are going to have the inflated numbers.
People who are unaware, like, content creators that somehow this hasn't, come across their desk, they're going to sit there and be like, oh my God, my channel's blowing up. What have I done? And they're trying to work out
Yeah.
it probably won't take them too long to find out that, it's a thing on the YouTube side, but quite funny that, you're just going to upload a video probably for us on the 25th, and it's going to do significantly better than the videos that came before it. So that's fun.
Yeah, cool. I guess we just got to adjust to that sort of thing.
I'm not uploading any videos now until the 25th, which is
You want
annoying.
that boost.
I was planning on uploading a video I've put a few weeks work into on the 22nd. I'll probably go ahead with that, but yeah.
Yeah, just that final one that goes out right before the old...
The final dud.
Yeah. Well, speaking of duds, let's talk about the RX 9050. Because you've actually tested the 8GB model now.
Yes, I managed to get one, which wasn't easy. I got it a lot quicker than I thought I would. Still haven't hunted down the 4GB version yet, but I have feelers out there, Tim.
Yes. So you've tested the 8GB model. You did a review on the channel. You got a card from a company that you cannot name for various different reasons. And you tested it. And it wasn't just the review that I found interesting, because obviously, like, we knew it was going to be this slow, horrible piece of crap card that isn't capable of playing a lot of games because it's so cut down. But also, you sort of revealed that AMD didn't really want these reviews made and potentially was restricting partners from sending out samples, kind of like what we saw with the RTX 5060 a while back. So do you want to give a bit more details into what exactly happened there and why they didn't want to do it?
Well, first and foremost, there was no review program, which, given recent discussions we've had, this is an example of why a review program is actually a good thing for people that look at buying these products, because as it stands right now, there are very few Radeon RX 9050 reviews on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple like mine, but not many, and not nearly as many as what there really needs to be for people to do the proper amount of research as to, the proper amount of research. So that side of things sucks. Now, yeah, so there was no review program. AMD weren't sampling them. None of their partners are sampling them, which is a bit different to what we saw with, say, the GeForce RTX 5060, because although Nvidia was withholding the driver until the public release, we did end up getting quite a few cards like 2 weeks before the public release. We didn't have the driver, so that's why we had to take one with us to Computex so we could download the driver when they went live. But at least we got sampled. In this instance, there were no samples. So AMD didn't provide samples, and their partners, I think, weren't allowed to provide samples at all, because I don't believe anybody really got sampled. So the excuse given to us was by, marketing companies that represent AMD sampling here in Australia and their partners, was that they're not releasing this product into Australia, and therefore they're not sending us a review sample, or they can't, one of the two. So
Okay.
we get hit with that a bit. It's either like OEM only, so they're not going to provide review samples, or like they're basically blocked from doing so, which annoys me, because OEM products still should get reviewed. Well, you know why they don't do it, because OEM only products are almost always garbage and they don't want coverage. So they just say, oh, it's OEM only. But I hate that excuse, because they can absolutely just send us one. It's
like, is OEM just code for crap? Because that's not how, like, people buy pre-built systems. More people buy pre-built, ready-to-go systems than DIY parts. It is a more popular category. So to sort of shove them into a corner and be like, we're just going to dump all our crap there and no one's going to test it, is like, yeah, but more people buy them than actual DIY products. So what are you doing? Why aren't you willing to have those products available for testing and analysis when they're sold widely?
Yeah, it's deliberately anti-consumer. They're basically like, look, you've already reviewed the retail version of this product, so we're not sampling the OEM version, despite the fact that the OEM version, while in this example shares the same name, is substantially worse. So, but with the 9050, the RX 9050, it's not an OEM only product, at least the 8GB model, but it is a region limited product. And so it's for the Asia Pacific region, as well as Latin America, I should say. Except while we are in the Asia Pacific region, Australia and Japan apparently aren't getting them, but everyone else in the Asia Pacific region is. But because we're in Australia, there's just no possible way they could sample us. Can't be done, guys.
International shipping has not been invented yet, which is really devastating, because you just, if someone's in another country, it can't happen.
Yeah, they act like there's like governmental sanctions in place. And it's like, look, we legally cannot send you an RX 9050. They're not destined for Australia. We couldn't make the exception and send them to reviewers that might be located in Australia. We've just come up with
it's a black hole.
Reasons.
It can't be done.
Yeah, it can't be done. So there was no samples to be sent. And then I spoke with a few partners, and they said, yeah, look, we can't send them to Australia. They're not allowed in your region. So we can't even make an exception and send you one. So anyway, I can't give any details away of whether it was a retailer or a distributor. Obviously I didn't get it through someone within Australia, because no one here can get them. But I had to go, somewhere else in the region, speak to someone and get them just to hop one over here for me. But I can't.
They made it through the black hole, a bit like Interstellar. They came out the other side of that bookcase, and you managed to get your hands on one. Which, I mean, it also frustrates me, the whole like, you're an Australian reviewer, therefore you can only cover Australian products thing. Which is, and I don't know how many times we've talked about this, but we're not really, like, I know we live in Australia.
Yeah, but it's bullshit, right? It's
most people watching our videos aren't from Australia. It's something like 5% of our viewers are from Australia, even lower. It's not even I think it's maybe the fifth most popular or sixth most popular country. Obviously, the United States is by far and away our largest audience, which is why most of our reviews and coverage we talk about things in US dollars. And so we're not like, yes, we live in Australia. Our operations are here, but we're not covering just
Yeah,
Australian products.
I hear what
We're
you're
covering
saying.
worldwide products. YouTube is accessible to anyone, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of companies out there that operate on this whole like,
there is.
yeah, like you only can get the stuff that is available in Australia, and you can only get it. It may not be the case that a product never comes to Australia, but Australia may get it, let's say, 3 months after the rest of the world. And so they're like, well, you can't, international shipping doesn't exist again. It's a black hole. You can't get stuff from other regions. You have to wait for the Australian launch. I'm like, okay, but
Well,
like,
in that example, that's a misunderstanding. They're making an assumption that the vast majority of our audience, because we're Australian, are Australian,
mhm.
when that couldn't be further from the truth. So that's just them misunderstanding. In this specific example, it's not that misunderstanding. It's like, hey, AMD, we would like a sample of this to review it. Oh yeah, we'd love to send you one. Yeah, we'll organize. Oh wait, hang on. You're in Australia. We would love to do it. It's just we can't because the rules are the rules, guys. Like it's Latin America and certain regions within the Asia Pacific region. You're just not on the list. Ah, gosh damn it. We really want to send you one, but if only you weren't in Australia. Meanwhile, nobody in any region got one. So there is no reviews, and it seems like partners, no matter what region you're in, aren't sending reviewers samples because we're not seeing reviewers in these other, regions that are apparently going to be getting them, getting review samples. So, and again, this is a really good example of why review samples are so important because at some point in time in the near future, these RX 9050s are going to start hitting shelves and there's just no reviews. So people are like, oh, yippee, an affordable RDNA 4 GPU, and it has 8 gigs of VRAM, so that's enough for me to play my games. That's really cool. I'll get that. But they could have almost certainly bought a different product that would be as good or better and probably better value, like an RX 7600 and RTX 5050. The 9050 is not an exciting product. It's not a good value product, at least based on all the pricing and availability we've seen in like the US and Australia and stuff like that. So we'd have to look into other regions where it pops up, but it's so bad. It's so slow. It's so cut down. I can't see it making sense anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the whole, sort of a benefit of the review program getting sort of highlighted here with this one because it was interesting seeing a lot of your feedback, and I don't mean you, Steve, but the audience to the previous podcast where we talked about the sort of review process and Marquez Brownlee, and it was, there were some comments from people saying about how, for true independence, I agree with, I think it was Peter's video about how, people need to be buying their own review samples and, I understand that Hardware Unboxed is trying their best or whatever, but ultimately you guys aren't truly independent because of those reasons. And then
They're
you
not
sort of,
wrong. In a perfect world, yes.
yes, but then we see these sort of situations like the RX 9050 where
Yeah, you can't get them.
it's a lack of review program. Instead of opening it up to everyone and making it so that independent reviewers are getting them and there's no manipulation or control, it's actually created more control because the lack of the review program instead of means that no one produces a review and no one gets it.
Yeah, which I brought up in last week's discussion. The only reason these people put their, I don't know, their neck on the line is because we have a relationship with them. And we have a relationship with them because we have a large YouTube channel and that relationship is of benefit to them. And I twisted their arm a bit and got them to do this favor for me. But if we were just a small channel like we were once upon a time, there's no shot they take that risk on us. They're just not going to do it. But they knew I wouldn't burn them. We have a long-standing relationship and, we have a large channel. So they think that maybe that'll be of benefit to them if they do this favor for us here, which again, it doesn't work like that with us. But hey, if they want to do us a favor and send us the card, I'm going to say thank you, and I'm not going to burn them, and that's good. But yeah, Where are the other reviews? Why haven't other smaller reviewers or just other reviewers got one? And what you said is exactly right. They've created this more privileged, closed off review program, which again, we've seen in the past when these sort of things pop up. It's really difficult to get them. And if you have the connections and the pull, it's usually of benefit for you. As we were saying with Marquez Brownlee, like he has that kind of pull. So does Linus. We've seen those guys have advantages over other creators, us included, because of their massive size. So having an actual review program where hundreds of reviewers get included is really good. And that's why we want to see that preserved.
I've just been doing some searching. Can you actually buy this card anywhere yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
So it was announced and it was sort of supposedly coming immediately. Like that was the sort of vibe I was getting from the announcement. They've released this card for $279. Funny enough, it's not actually being released in the US, but they still give this sort of US price. But then, I'm sort of searching for it in like the Latin America region, for example, and I'm not really seeing it available. Like I'm not seeing a retailer that you can go to right now. Maybe I'm not overly familiar with like Latin American retailers, but it doesn't seem like it's on shelves, which is weird. But then, some companies are making them and have them available.
Yeah, and some distributors, to my knowledge, have them as well. So they can't be far away, but it's a bit weird how there has been a delay. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But we did see that with the RTX 5060 Ti, the 8GB card was delayed by about a week. This is a different scenario, but that was just a weirdness with the 8GB model. Nvidia said they weren't doing it to avoid reviews and giving everyone a week to just cover the 16GB model. Not sure about that one, but this whole thing's been very unusual because the 4GB OEM card still hasn't popped up in those systems yet, despite those systems being listed weeks ago.
That's right. Yep.
But I think I think they'll be popping up next week would be my guess. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And I'll be buying one.
Yeah, well, that's going to be fun. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the performance that you sort of showed in the review was of any real surprise. The fact that it has 8GB of VRAM, which is, and I'm saying that in a positive way. Normally we talk about 8GB as being bad, but in this sense, it's better than the 4GB version. It doesn't really save the model at all. It's not like just because it has 8GB, it's now capable of playing today's games and the 4GB model would be crippled. What you showed in your review is that it's just the shader cores it's just too far cut down to be of use in today's games. When
I mean, the RTX 3050 was a joke upon release, right?
And that was how many years ago?
Yeah, not the 5050, the 3050.
Yeah.
Was utter shambles. It's only 20% faster than that.
Yes, and that card was released, 4 years ago?
Yeah, and it was absolutely awful upon release.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible. I can't put into words how bad the 3050 was. And this is, at 1080p, that averaged 40, and the RX 9050 averaged 49 FPS. It's like 23% faster or something. That's insane. It's 11% faster than the RX 6600. So an RX 6600 has 8GB of VRAM.
Mm-hmm.
That was under $200 for how long?
Many years, I think. Certainly once the cryptocurrency prices sort of died off, those cards were very affordable. And there was a lot of them. They were abundant, very easy to get. I think it's because they oversupplied them. But didn't it? Because that card launched at like $330 or something, didn't it? And that was all priced because of the crypto mining boom and everything. And so it was sort of poorly reviewed based on that. And then over time, it wasn't the fastest card, but back then it was like, it was so affordable that if you were building an entry-level GPU, entry-level system, you kind of just put one in. It was kind of the go-to option. But then obviously that card was released like 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not a capable card today.
No, it was a good value entry-level card when it was priced under $200. But yeah, I mean, it's still, like these, and this is where people get a little bit confused with our opinion on this. We're not saying that the 9058 gigabytes not usable. So the performance on medium to low settings in a lot of games is going to be reasonable. Maybe not like your most demanding AAA titles, but Forza Horizon 6, that would work. And then obviously games like Fortnite would work perfectly fine on performance mode. So it is a very usable card, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still garbage and need not exist at $280 US. It's just a dumb product at that price. And I think probably the main criticism I saw of my review was people saying, "Oh, but you're testing with like ultra settings that, because," and we're doing that for comparative data, right? We've already tested a whole heap of cards. So the easiest way was just to add that to our comparative data rather than go look at like medium quality settings. Having said that, some of the games like Cyberpunk was tested using the high quality preset at 1080p.
It's a 5-year-old game anyway. So
but that's one notch off medium, and that's not a demanding setting. I can't, if I go through the results here. So like the 7800 XT did 92 FPS, and the newer like 5060 Ti's and stuff are rendering around. Oh, that's 1440p. I'm not even looking at the 1080p. Hang on. I was gonna say they seem low. Yeah, hang on. Wind back. The B580 rendered 89 FPS under the same settings. So we got 67 FPS on the 9050. Like your Arc A770 was faster. So like that's not a really demand. But anyway, the main criticism of the review was that in a lot of the games I tested ultra type settings, which is absolutely true, but it was done for comparative purposes. But it's just not a valid argument to make, because all of the graphics cards, such as the RTX 5050, for example, were tested under the same conditions. And VRAM wasn't a concern at 1080p in the titles tested in the way in which they were tested. Like I wasn't enabled ray tracing or anything. And a lot of the games were quite old, like a Plague Tale Requiem. But my point is, whether I tested a Plague Tale Requiem using the ultra settings at 1080p or medium at 1080p, you're going to see very, very similar scaling between a 9050 and an RTX 5050, and therefore the conclusion ends up being the same, and your cost per frame analysis ends up being the same. So it's just a bad product for the simple fact that at $280, it's worse value than garbage tier products. And I'm talking about garbage tier products at the current retail price, not the MSRPs, not the price they were 3 years ago, the current retail prices. So you can buy an RTX 3050 for $220 US, and that ends up being better value per frame than the 9050. I mean, you don't really need to go on beyond that point, do you?
No, I mean, if I was, and I think this is the point that I've been making for a while with these lower tier cards, is that, it gets to a point where, and we've seen this across many generations now, they give you good value up to a certain point, and then below that, you start getting diminishing returns. So they start giving these shitter and shitter products that are sort of slightly cheaper, but they cut back significantly. And so anything below that sort of point, and whether right now, I mean, ideally you'd want people to buy like a 16 gig 9060 XT, but I understand they're around $450, which is quite expensive. So, an 8 gigabyte model maybe is sort of that lowest point. Below that, you should pretty much just give up on the new market. I mean, I've sort of been looking at, while you've been chatting.
Oh, Tim, you sound like an elitist. Not everyone can afford a 5090. Stop being an elitist.
I know.
That's the argument every time. Yeah. It's so painful. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. We're advocating for the entry-level gamers. We're saying that the 9050 at $280 is bad. You're getting rolled. You shouldn't have to spend $400 to get an 8 gigabyte 9060 to get a much better value product.
Yeah, that's right.
We get that it's more money, like having to come up with another $120, $140, whatever it might be. We're not saying just make more money, have more money. What we're saying is AMD needs to do better. Like this needs to be a $200 product, not a $280 product, if they want to halve the core count, like from the 9060 XT. So I don't know what to say about that, but that's the main criticism I see from people when they're like out of touch YouTubers. They all have 5090s. They're saying you can't game on a 8 gigabyte 5090, and we're not a 9050, sorry. And we're not saying that. We're just saying it is terrible value. Like we have the data there. We're not setting some kind of unrealistic expectations or some subjective metric. The performance is there and the price is there. Add those things together and you get one of the worst value entry-level GPUs on the market right now.
Yeah, so I think below that sort of point where it makes sense, you should just ignore the new market and just go straight to the used market. And I've sort of been
Well,
having a look
yeah.
on eBay at what you can get if you had $280 or less. And first of all, the RX 6600, which you said is, slightly slower, you can get those for like $180. Like they're in abundant supply, lots of people looking to get rid of them. And in the US, there's listings right now on eBay. Some of them are sort of around the sort of $200 mark. Some of them you can get them for, like I said, $180. But really, if you had $270 or $280 on the used market, and obviously this is, used versus new, there's going to be warranty differences and that sort of thing. But that is about the price of a 6700 XT on the used market right now. So plenty of options right now. $260, $280, just scrolling through, $275 for used 6700 XTs. And in my opinion, much better product, much faster, gives you more VRAM. And while it doesn't have some of the latest features, you're not going to be able to run FSR4 until early 2027 when AMD says they're going to be releasing that feature for RDNA 2. But it is just a much faster card. And if you wanted a GeForce model for around that price, right now in the used market, I think you can get RTX 3070s for about $250. So, yeah, like I said, quite a few options available for around that price. It's not a fast GPU. Like, we're not talking about cutting edge stuff. Obviously, the 3070 is limited by 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But, like, honestly, would you rather buy an RX 9050 for $280 new or go to the used market and buy someone's old 3070 for $250? Like, I think that is clear to me which option is better, and the better option is the used market.
Yeah. Also, so the RX 6600 at the $180 US, is that what you said?
Yes.
Used?
Yep.
So that comes out to a cost per frame of $4, which means it's around 30% cheaper. So 30% better value than the 9058 gigabyte. Now, we are comparing used to new, so it's not technically fair. However, one caveat I'll add to this is we're going off the MSRP for the 9058 gigabyte, whereas all the other cards are the current retail price. So is the 9050 going to come in at what amounts to $280 US, or is it going to come in at $300 US or $310? Because if it does, that completely changes, its value and makes it substantially worse. So, if it was to come in at, say, $310, that makes it similar to the 7600 XT in terms of cost per frame. So much worse than a 5060, an RTX 5060. So anyway, we'll just have to wait and see. But
yeah, I mean, just having a look at new prices, I don't think they really can. Like, I know that it probably will end up being a little more expensive, but RTX 5050s are still available for pretty much the same sort of price they were a month ago when this card was first launched.
$320.
Yeah, $320. There is a model, a low profile model for $300, but about $320 sort of makes sense. And then if you want to jump up to the RTX 5060, obviously that is a more expensive card these days, but they're still available for sort of, I think they're about, what's the cheapest model? No, they've gone up to $460 now. So you probably wouldn't buy one of those, I wouldn't have thought. I swear they were much cheaper recently, but I guess everything's going up, isn't it, these days?
The jump over, for a lot of graphics cards, the jump over the last 2 weeks has been pretty brutal.
Yeah, the 9060 XT 8 gigabyte is still around for the cheapest models. You can, some of them around $450 now as well, but the cheaper models, you can get them for a little lower than that. But yeah, I mean, the current GPU pricing situation is not great overall, so that's why it would have been nice if this GPU was a bit more capable. And I think this is one of the real issues this generation, and will be next generation as well, is, obviously memory is one of the more expensive components on a card right now. It's going to make a lot more sense to make products where you're not cutting down the GPU core as much on the same levels of VRAM, because that is a much easier way to deliver better value to customers right now. So if you're stuck in this 8 gigabyte segment and you need to offer something to people for slightly lower money than it was previously, you don't create a card where you just halve everything that's available in it. You try and just maybe massage it a little bit to make it slightly lower than the current configurations, because it has the same 8 gigabytes of memory as a 9060 XT that currently goes for around $450, but they're offering it for $280. So clearly it's not the VRAM that's the issue. It's they're finding savings in other areas, but those savings are the worst ways to save money. So
Yep.
yeah, that's frustrating, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to summarize the RX 9050 as a product, as a launch, just as a whole. It's a disappointing and frustrating product. But yeah, I can't wait to see the 4 GB model. I'm super excited for that one, Tim. Can't wait to get my hands on it. It's going to be a ripper.
Yeah. Yeah, 4 GB GPUs. Now, do you think that the next generation we're going to be stuck with 8 GB and stuff again in the entry level again, or is this? I mean, we've seen 4 GB this generation. We thought 8 GB would be a tough stretch for this one.
I'm certain we'll see 8 GB for the entry level cards. Now, I'm more certain than ever. Of course, it does depend on what's happening with all this AI nonsense and the demand there, or I don't even know if demand's the right word, but you know what I mean. So we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out and what they end up doing. At the moment, there's kind of almost no GeForce branding relevant in gaming, which is wild to see. So we talked in our Q&A series last month about how we've been speaking to a few little birdies and they've been telling us that GeForce pricing for 12 to 16, but certainly the 16 GB models was going to jump by 40% in the next few weeks, which I think at the time we found pretty hard to believe given how high they already were. But the people we spoke to were adamant that they had, they showed us pricing lists and stuff like that. And sure enough, the figures were up to 40% larger. And in the last week or so, we've seen that come true. So you're now here in Australia and more so even in the US. I think the US, the 5060 Ti, so the GeForce RTX 5060 Ti 16 GB now costs more than a Radeon RX 9070 XT. So yeah, I said that right. 5060 Ti 16 GB costs more than the 9070 XT.
Yes, I believe the 9070 XTs are starting around $720 for the cheapest models at the moment.
Yep.
So, for example, ASRock Challenger, you can buy one on Newegg right now for $720, and there's a few models for $730 as well. So that's not an outrageous price, but certainly $720 to $750. For the 5060 Ti 16 GB, you're looking at $750 for the absolute cheapest model gigabyte
Most are over
WindForce
like
card.
800, aren't they?
That's right. So there's an MSI Shadow for $780, and then it quickly starts jumping up where most models are $800.
Yeah, so I think in another week or two, expect them all to be over $800. Obviously,
they're more expensive than a 5070.
They're about the same. I think the 5070 might have jumped up a bit as well, and they're about the same. I think they start at about $810 maybe. Something like that, $810.
Let's have a look. $800 for the Gigabyte WindForce RTX 5070, and then there's a few models slightly above that.
Yeah, so they're pretty similar, but they both cost more than a 9070 XT, which is insane because that GPU is quite a bit, it's at least 25% faster, I would say, than a 5070 and substantially faster than a 5060 Ti. So if you're in the market for a graphics card, I can't imagine buying, especially if it's got, if you want 16 GB of VRAM, I can't imagine not going Radeon. You're either getting a 9060 XT 16 GB or a 9070 or a 9070 XT because they're just substantially better value right now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the 9060 XT 16 GB, even those, they're available for around $470. What does that get you in a GeForce card at the moment? Like an RTX 5060. So I mean, I know what I'd be buying, and that's not even just like a one-off option. There are several models available for $470 with the 16 GB configuration of the 9060 XT on Newegg right now as we're making this podcast. And again, we looked at the RTX 5060 pricing just earlier. So, obviously NVIDIA's cards still have these feature sets that are more desirable for a lot of people with things like DLSS, but I'm not going to be buying an RTX 5060 8 GB over a 9060 16.
That's a stretch. Like, I think in terms of cost per frame, doing the rough math in my head, you would be looking at something like a 50% advantage, like 50% better value for a 9070 XT versus an RTX 5070. Like, I'm pretty sure you'd be looking around 50% better value.
Mm.
So DLSS ain't that good. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, not with FSR 4.1 being available now and in a lot of games. I mean, obviously people have other uses for these cards, but like gaming specifically, yeah, it's just
Yeah, we're talking about gaming because there'll be someone going, oh, but the price is so high because of AI. People running local AI. We don't care about that. We're not saying where the demand's coming from. We're just talking about the actual pricing. And if you're a gamer looking at this, what you would actually buy, not someone looking at running a bloody local model at home or something.
yeah, there have been rumors of AMD Radeon pricing going up soon as well, or at least it has. I mean, things have been creeping up
They
slowly
have.
over time, so it's not like they've just been able to maintain pricing long term. However, the current gap that we're seeing in the market is pretty significant.
Yeah, it's
I
absurd.
I don't know how much more of an increase we will see on the AMD cards. I would expect over time a 9070 XT will be hitting sort of that $800 range, sort of similar to what you'd see for the 5070 right now. But even then, like to have like an Nvidia GPU with 16 gigabytes of memory go from being, what was the MSRP of the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte? It was like 400 and
450?
430, I think it was.
Well, yeah, I think it was, 430.
I think it was
God,
380 for the 8 gig model and 430 for the 16 gig model off the top of my head. We could probably fact check that for on the video version. But to have that card go from that price to $800 means that memory prices, I think for every, when I did the calculations a while back in that video I think it was late last year when we were sort of hypothesizing what will happen to GPU prices if memory prices go up by certain levels. So like if they double, what will happen to the prices? And I think when I was looking at like doubling and tripling of memory, it was only going to impact these cards by a few $100s, which seemed outrageous at the time to sort of say like a $430 GPU would then become like $600 because that was like crazy, right? And that was like from the tripling modeling
well,
or whatever.
that would be what it's affecting it by, though. To be fair, that would be true. That analysis.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all I'm saying is that right now it means that memory prices have gone up by, and this obviously makes sense if you have a look at what's happening. It's gone up by like 4 or 5x, even more than that. And there are some reports sort of suggesting that potentially there's a little bit of taking the piss with this in terms of the amount that these cards have gone up by is not necessarily reflective of the increase in memory prices. But certainly if memory prices go up by 4 or 5x, the cards do become hundreds of dollars more expensive and they're not sacrificing margins. Like these are extremely high margin products. Nvidia is making a boatload of cash on these. They have not reduced margins when you're buying a 5060 Ti for $800. They are making hundreds of dollars per sale on those cards.
Yeah, if it was just the memory alone, you would have seen the 9070. I know it's different memory, but you would have seen them go up substantially more than they have. I think they've gone up relative to the increase in memory price. The demand for the GeForce GPUs, like I said, is the AI models being able to run on that 16 gigabytes of RAM. So it's a demand issue, I guess, that we're seeing on the GeForce side, compounded with the increased memory prices.
So it'd be interesting to sort of track those prices as things go. But yes, right now you'd probably say Radeon, they're in a pretty good position and they should be doing, and again, we've mentioned, how many times do we mention this on the podcast? Feel like a broken record. If they want to gain market share, like there was in the cryptocurrency era where they completely blew it, there is opportunity in these markets to gain market share. They are in a low market share position, and you can gain market share when your products are significantly more attractive than your competitors, and you need to be doing everything possible to maintain that position. But
at least amongst gamers, like the GeForce GPUs are obviously selling because of stuff I've already talked about. But I mean, if you go over to like the Amazon right now on Amazon Australia, the number one best selling graphics card is a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte. But there are a lot of GeForce, like 5060 type GeForce GPUs as well.
Yeah, I was just having a look at Amazon in the US right now. Again, 90. Well, actually, the top selling thing is once again a GPU
We can
support
ignore
bracket.
that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
But yes,
Radeon's dominating. Yeah.
I'm seeing the number 2, 4, and 5 models are all 9060 XTs or 9070 XTs. And then you've got the 5070 Ti GeForce WindForce model from Gigabyte in the 6th position. So it's there's a few Radeon models up the top here, but once you sort of start getting down into those sort of like 8 to 10 range, there's the 5060 and 5060 Ti models coming in there in terms of bestsellers. But it is more of a mix than you would normally see. In a normal market, the top positions would be GeForce GPUs. So it is making a difference. I mean, like right now on Amazon, you can get a 9070 XT for like $730, and the 5070 Ti is $1,100. So it's like, I don't know. I just feel like the 5070 Ti purchase is pretty silly there. So I just don't know why people would buy it at that price.
Well, clearly for gaming, people aren't, because Radeon on the US Amazon has the top 3 slots, and presumably the top slot is probably selling significantly higher volumes than the 4th slot. To what degree, we have no idea, but I think it's safe to assume that it's considerably more. Like I doubt it's like 200 of this one, then 190 of that one, and then 170. It could be, but the number 1 seller is probably heavily outselling the 4th and sort of 5th and 6th positions. But I don't have any evidence to support that claim. It's just based on other sales data that I've seen.
Well, unless you had anything else to talk about, I don't think we have too many more topics to dive into because, again, not too much is happening at the moment. There'll probably be some things to talk about next week once we get to other testing that we've...
I was going to say, did you just cut you off? Sorry. Did you see the Nova Lake leak for the leaked naming of the Core Ultra 9?
Oh, what are they going with? Are they putting AI in the name?
No, but they've added a digit.
Okay, so they were, well, for a while they were at 5 digits, then they went to 3. Are you saying they're going back up to 4 now?
They're going back up to 4, but you've still got so it's the Intel Core Ultra 9 4950K. What do you think of that, Tim?
I mean, it does bring back nostalgia for older Intel parts, right? Like the 7700K, the 8700K, and all those
that rolls
parts
off the tongue better, I reckon, than the 4950K. And again, this is like leaked rumor type stuff, so I'm not.
Is it better to be a 495K, 495K, or a 4950K? Because those are probably the 2 options, right? Because the current models are like the 285K and stuff like that. Does it flow off the tongue better 495K versus 495?
I think like 485 is okay. I don't know.
485, 480, 4800. I mean, 100 sounds good, doesn't it? It's like, power, nice, powerful CPU there. I don't know. At least they're not putting AI in the name, because the rumors are for the next gen Ryzen parts that they will have AI in the name, which is pretty bad. Oh, that's going to be just a disaster in terms of naming if they do that. But of course, they've done it for all their mobile parts. Yeah, Core Ultra 9, it feels long. I mean, we're only talking about 1 extra digit, but Core and then Ultra 9, I don't know. Does it make a difference at the end of the day? Did they make a 4950K back in the day? Or is it like we're talking back when the naming scheme was, there was an i5 like 4690K.
4970, I think it was.
4970. But they're certainly going back to those
4970, and because it was the 4770. The 4770K was the original processor, and they made a slightly overclocked 4790K, if I'm recalling.
Right,
correctly.
And that would have been like a decade ago. Launch date 2014.
Yeah, that was the good old quad core days.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would have thought that if you're making because Nova Lake is supposed to be this big change in terms of the core architecture, the improvements. Well, it's a whole new platform that they're supposedly going to be supporting for longer. Probably a good time for a branding refresh, I would have thought, but not in this way.
Well, I guess the branding refresh was the the Core 200 series, and that was a mega flop. So they're probably like, we didn't get a lot of momentum there. And they're doing like the Hollywood thing, like, oh, the latest thing failed. Nostalgia bait. That's what we'll do. That
Yeah.
works every time.
We'll double down on the name, but we'll add in some nostalgia bait.
Yeah.
I don't know whether maybe it would have been better off if they moved away from that sort of ultra whatever processor naming and went to something entirely different, sort of signify that they're putting that in the past and moving forward with something that's different. But
they should have just gone back to Core i5, Core i7, Core i9, which they should have probably never left, to be honest, but whatever. They know better than I do, so we'll just go with it. But as you say, ultimately, it really only matters that they're good, right? Who cares about the name if they're good?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like i9, i7, i5. Maybe it was just because Intel's processors were better during that era. I feel like that works better than Ultra. Ultra is more clumsy than It adds to the length. It's, and supposedly we were getting these, non-Ultra parts, but then it seemed like most of the stuff on the desktop was just the Ultra stuff. So,
well, they're just running away from fails and screw-ups. So I imagine one of the reasons why they bailed on that was because of all the negative press they were getting around the degradation issues of the Core i7s and Core i9s. So that really tainted those products moving forward. Because there was games saying, oh, you're using a Core i7 or a Core i9 CPU. Be aware that if you haven't updated your BIOS, this is going to crash probably. Not our fault. Your CPU sucks.
So yeah, that was a great time for Intel.
Not great because people can go, or shill reviewers, or they're making it up, or it never happened. I'm not the video game developer with just disgusting amounts of data that are showing that Core i7s and Core i9s are failing left, right, and center. And I've put a message in my game to warn those people to update their BIOS and load Intel default profiles. Like the reviewers weren't saying that. You can't blame that on YouTubers. I don't know what to tell you on that one. But you can cope all day. But game developers were saying, oh, you're running a Core i7. Make sure your BIOS is updated and you're running the Intel default profiles. Otherwise, your system might crash. So anyway, they were obviously trying to avoid that, and they went to the Core Ultra 200 series, which we thought was a really nice step in the right direction. But, it was coming up against some solid competition from AMD, and ultimately it did flop. So they didn't have a lot of momentum to build on that one to continue with a new series. But I just hope Nova Lake's good, because that would be amazing. So fingers crossed, and I don't care about the name.
It seems like they're releasing Nova Lake first for desktop. At least that's what Robert Halleck from Intel has indicated. Yep. So direct quote from them, it's coming to desktop first. Mm-hmm. That's a direct quote from him. So, I mean...
shouldn't be far away now. And I mean, like I said, we're seeing these leaks of them in the wild, being used in anger. So hopefully not far away, and hopefully they're really good.
But yeah, that is a change from Intel's previous however many generations, dating back probably more than a decade now, where they've typically launched the mobile parts first, because they've just, I mean, they're actually, the architecture these days for the mobile parts is relatively different to the desktop parts in terms of the different tiles and stuff like that they offer for the mobile parts. But obviously for this generation, sounds like, well, they've confirmed that it's coming to the desktop first, so maybe signifying a bit of a change in priorities for Intel, debuting hopefully they're better. Because if they are good and you want to launch the new series with your best offering and the desktop parts coming first, then maybe that's a good signal. But I think AMD's been typically launching the Ryzen parts on desktop first for a while. Well, they launched them for Epic CPUs, server stuff first. I'm not counting those. For consumer parts, they've been going with the desktop first as well for a while now. So anyway, that'll all be interesting. Still not sure whether it's coming this year or early next year, but not too far away, I don't think. Let's take a break. We'll come back and briefly talk about our boring lives. And we're back, Steve. What has been happening in your life?
A couple of little things here and there since we last spoke. So we had a nice sunny day last weekend, and I thought before I watched the football, because I had a night game, so I got to sit in the spa and watch the game at night. It was really nice, and they won comfortably, so I was very relaxed. Thanks for asking. But that day I got outside because it was a nice sunny day, and we have like a retaining wall that we did over summer earlier in the year, and it needed like a balustrade put on it. So I welded up some posts and put a handrail on. Haven't run the stainless steel wire yet, but the reason I'm telling you that story is because I finally got to fire up my new bandsaw and do some cutting, and
Nice.
worked a treat. So good, just hitting the go button, standing back. And my wife actually did all the cutting. So I was outside welding, and we've got like a series of rollers. So you can put the 8 meter long beam on it, roll it through, measure, cut it. And so she did all of that by herself. She did an awesome job. And then she just brought them out to me and I welded them in. So it was quite the good production line. And yeah, the saw worked a treat, very easy to operate, wrapped with it. So couldn't be happier there. We didn't have to do too much, just got it basically set up, put some cutting fluid in it, and yeah, worked out how to adjust the hydraulic arm, get the speed going there, and do some cutting. So
Nice.
yep, that was fun. Highlight of my week for sure, getting to use the new bandsaw. And I also made a new purchase. So
Okay.
I've got the Blue Eddy power stations. Did you end up buying any of those?
I haven't yet, but you keep mentioning that I should. So eventually I'll get around to it.
So the original AC 180 models that I purchased, they have a 20 millisecond switching time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not quite fast enough to be used with sort of sensitive electronic components like, I guess, computer power supplies. But I got one as a test and it worked flawlessly on my PC with a particular power supply I had. We got another one for Balin's Threadripper system, and it would like occasionally not switch fast enough and it would reset his computer. So we changed his power supply and that solved that. And we went along for about a year without them failing. They worked every time. Having not adjusted any settings or anything, more recently, they almost never work. So when the power goes out, they just don't work. And the weird thing is, though, when you reboot, if you then test it, it works every time. It's like they go to sleep and the UPS function doesn't work. And then once you wake it up, then it works flawlessly.
That's
But I
weird.
also bought an AC 180 for Zoe's computer, which you would have seen in the video if you watched it when we built out her bedroom. And admittedly, hers isn't as old as ours. It's probably only coming up to maybe, I'm not even sure how long it's been in there for now. Whenever that video went live, you'd have to look that up. But hers is still flawless. So the one, Balin has two, I've got one. Those three basically fail. I can't remember. Balin's fails about half the time. My fails all the time. And Zoe's works flawlessly all the time. Similar load, same settings. They're all updated to the same firmware. So they've been hit and miss. Pretty annoying. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to... And to be fair to Blue Eddy, they do have newer models with 10 millisecond switching times, which I got for my other daughter, and that one's been flawless. And we got a smaller unit up on the modem, and that's been flawless. And 10 milliseconds is closer to what you need, like a proper, UPS, I think, is in the 2 to 3 millisecond range. Anyway, I decided to give another brand, the sort of second biggest brand in this space, EcoFlow, a go. So I bought their, far out, I forget the name now. I might have to go to their website and try and work it out. It's the Pro something or other. It's the Delta 3. I think it's the Max or Pro or Plus or something. It's got something like that in there. Anyway, bought that. It has a 10 millisecond or sub 10 millisecond switching time. It's in that range. It's the Max Plus. There you go. I've got the Delta 3 Max Plus. So it's 3,000 watt output. It can handle up to 6,000 watts for short periods of time, but we don't use that aspect of it. It's just the UPS function we wanted. Anyway, I've had that on Balin's computer for a week now. We've tested it a few times. It works. We'll have to see how it goes long term, but it has a much faster switching time at sub 10 milliseconds. I just say less than 10 milliseconds. So I don't know, is it 9? Anyway,
9.99999 milliseconds.
I was going with it being 10. So yeah, it's been good so far. But I have a little story with this one, Tim. So it was about $2,500 Australian, so not a cheap unit. I read a heap of reviews, did a fair bit of research, and a lot of people were reporting the UPS functionality of that particular model to be excellent and work really well. So, via my research, it looked pretty good. So I bought it. $2,500 purchase. It arrives. Very excited. Balin and I plug it in, start charging it up. I connect to it with the app, which works really well. It works over Wi-Fi, so really easy to control. And I would say the software is much better than the Blue 80 software, much more control, and it's more seamless. Again, it is a newer unit than the AC 180s. And I think the newer Wi-Fi Blue 80s are good, but they use the same software. So I think the software overall is probably better, and it's very fast, like instant. You change something on your phone, it changes on the device straight away. Like there's basically no latency.
Yeah.
So that's cool. We were charging it and it was loud, like NV10 mini PC loud. Actually, probably louder than that, right? It's screaming a bit because it was charging at like 2,300 watts. So I'm like, well, that makes sense. It's charging it at max charge rate, so the fans are probably going pretty wild. And on the back, I adjusted it to the adjust mode, which means in the software I could change the charging state. So I put it on silent, which drops it down to about 200 watts, and it was still screaming. Just going, that's weird. Maybe it just does it on the first charge, not sure. So I updated the software on it, which rebooted it. It rebooted into the silent charging mode. The fans are still screaming. So like, what's going on here? Messed around the software, went through it like 5 times looking for some sort of option. Couldn't find anything to control the fans or why, some sort of explanation as to why it was just bloody loud. Did a bit of Googling. People spoke about the earlier EcoFlow models as having a lot of fan-related issues, but didn't really seem to apply to my new unit. And then when we looked inside it, because there's got like a honeycomb mesh grill at the top, which you'll see in the photos of it, we could see there was 2 maybe 80 mil fans, sort of like your server grade type fans, the thick boys. The one on the right was going hell for leather, and the one on the left was completely idle, completely stationary. So that's interesting. I would have expected them both to be spinning. So I thought about it a bit more, and I'm like, I reckon that other fan should be spinning. I wonder if it's connected properly. And Balaam was like, oh, no, it will be. I'm like, yeah. So anyway, we went over it. I ended up contacting the company that I bought it through. I'm like, look, I'm going to have to send this back. It's defective. It shouldn't be spinning because, we'd been going for hours at this point. It was so loud in the office. It was driving me crazy. Obviously, you could force turn it off, but the second you powered it on, it was just... so I was like, Anyway, I thought, you know what? I know it's not wise to take these things apart, given that they're, batteries that you can't turn off, so you'll be very careful with them. It's also brand new under warranty. But I noticed you could remove the lid without it being obvious that you'd done that. There's no void warranty stickers or anything like that. And
except admitting to it on the podcast.
Well, that part of it's fine. Like, I don't care about that. It was more just if it was defective and I couldn't get it fixed. And this was more of a convenience thing than anything, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't really about the money. It was like, I didn't want to have to send, because the store I got it from is like an hour and a half from where I live. So
it's probably super heavy too.
Well, I think it's about 40 kilograms. So I'm not going to pay to send it back. So it means I'd have to get in my car, do a 3-hour round trip to drop it off. And then they're probably not want to, they're not going to want to pay the $80 to ship it again. So I'll then have to do another 3-hour round trip to pick it up at some point. And it's just like, oh man, there's 6 hours of driving involved here on this thing that I just spent a ton of money on. Like, pretty annoyed. So I just thought, I'm doing it, Tim. I'm sending it. So I took the lid off and, as I said, being careful, had a look at the fans. They all looked fairly right. And I thought, I'll just carefully put my finger in there and push it down. So I went for the first fan. It looked pretty snug in its, the clip. Pushed the second one. It goes down about 2 mil and then goes clip. Thought, what? And Balin heard it. He's like, no way. Like, well, that was the fan that wasn't spinning. So we put the cover back on, screw it all back down, fire it up. Dead silent. Totally fixed it. And if you put it in fast charge mode now, both fans spin up, but it wasn't as loud as it was previously. So it had gone into some fail safe mode where, if it detects one fan failing, the other one just goes hell for leather. But nowhere in the software or anywhere does it have a fan failure alarm. It doesn't report fan failure. It just goes hell for leather on the other fan. So if it had been reporting fan failure, like, I would have known that it was a fan failure. Anyway, the good news was about to fix it, put it back together, and it all works fine. But how dodgy is that quality control? Brand new top of the range unit. One of the fans wasn't plugged in properly. And I wouldn't even give them the benefit of the doubt and say, in shipping it probably got knocked and came undone, because once those suckers clip in, like, you're just not pulling them back out. It just hadn't been clipped in.
Yeah, not great.
Unless the clip's broken, but I mean, it clipped in real well when I pushed in. I couldn't pull it back out. I jiggled the cord a bit and it was in there.
Factory problem, I reckon. They didn't do it at the factory.
I reckon they didn't either. But anyway, stoked with it so far. Once we got it actually sorted out, that awful hiccup aside, it's been working well. Would I recommend EcoFlow based on that experience? Look, could be unlucky. These things can happen, I suppose. But the software seems really good, and so far it's run really well. But I'll keep you updated. I wouldn't recommend the AC180s anymore for PC use, despite the fact that Zoe's is still going well. I don't know if the UPS side of things, the functionality degrades a bit to the point where it is way too slow. I'm not sure. We had 3 units now that are kind of useless. And again, it's really weird because if you have a power outage and they miss and then you fire them back out, if the power goes out within, say, half an hour, they work every single time without fail. But then if it goes for days, they're just like, it's like that function turns off. And I've tried reconfiguring them. I've tried following the guides. There's really not much to the setup. But the newer Blue Eddy 10 millisecond models seem to work fine. But again, I don't know if they degrade over time. I'll have to let you guys know. But so far, I want to say I'm happy with the EcoFlow. Again, the initial impression, not great. But since we've got past that little hiccup, it's been good. Anyway, that's I think that's pretty much everything for me this week, Tim. What about you?
Well, I actually finished this game last week, but we didn't do a boring life section last week to talk about it. But I want to talk about 007 First Light, a game that I played and finished a couple of weeks ago. So I guess to give some context, I am a fan of James Bond. I'm not like a mega fan or anything, but I'm a fan in the sense that I've seen many of the films.
And you have an Aston Martin.
I would love to have an Aston Martin, but no, I don't. I don't own an Aston Martin. That'd be nice. But
imagine an Aston Martin that had like the Q stuff, so you could like push a button.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I want a rocket launcher and an ejector seat and all that.
It's funny because Tim's not at all into cars, and it's kind of hard to get him excited about cars, but an Aston Martin with that kind of stuff, he's getting excited now for the first time about cars.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about like the twin turbo V8 in there.
No.
He just wants the flip down headlights and the machine gun.
I know it's ejector seats break your spine and all that sort of thing, but I still give it a go. Still worth it. So I've seen quite a few of the James Bond films, all the Daniel Craig ones, and quite a few of the earlier ones, dating all the way back to the Sean Connery era. Love those ones. A bit more goofy back in the day, a bit of silly stuff. Obviously, the Daniel Craig stuff's a bit more gritty, sort of maybe a newer style there. But I'm a fan of James Bond. Not a mega fan, but a fan. And I also am a fan of IO Interactive, the developers who made 007 First Light, because I'm a big fan of their Hitman games, especially the more recent trilogy, which I think is just really high quality games, lots of flexibility and freedom in those games. And so I was pretty excited to play 007 First Light. They're sort of probably one of their first attempts at this sort of like existing IP situation. And I thought it was a really good game. Obviously, it got good reviews as well, so this wasn't a huge surprise. But yeah, it's a surprisingly solid story for a game, because often with games, the gameplay is kind of the key feature, and they sort of slap together some sort of story around it. And usually it's, for action adventure games like this, it's not amazing. But this game sort of has a good combination of gameplay and the story. It genuinely does feel like a James Bond movie. They've put together a lot of the classic James Bond stuff. So obviously you're in MI6 and then you can go visit Q and set up all your gadgets and stuff like that. And then as the story progresses, it's pretty compelling. There's a lot of interesting stuff, some twists and turns. It's a good James Bond type of story. So they really delivered on that. And then the gameplay is I wouldn't say it's like a Hitman game, but they've been inspired by Hitman clearly. So there's missions where you've got some freedom to approach it in different ways. There's some of the mechanics from those previous games, like eavesdropping, sort of listening in, going around in these sort of more open areas and finding multiple avenues to approach problems. Part of that is in this game, probably not as flexible as in Hitman 3, for example, where you often had quite a few different ways of approaching things. This is more of a sort of linear story for the most part. But once you get into some of the, there are linear sections, and then there's sort of these, you might go to this, there's a chess tournament that's in this big manor that's part of the story, and it's sort of, you can explore the whole manor and find different ways to go about things like the Hitman games. So I think they've succeeded in that front as well. So overall, a game that I would recommend. It runs reasonably well on PC. They haven't added in any of the path tracing stuff that they promised would come at some point after launch yet. So I played the game, a couple of weeks ago. It came out in May. Not sure when that mega path tracing update is supposed to come. There are a few ghosting issues and things with upscaling in the game that I wasn't a huge fan of, but it looks good. It ran reasonably well for me. Decent visuals, decent gameplay and story. So 007 First Light gets my tick of approval as a game that I recommend, especially if you're a fan of James Bond or a fan of IO Interactive, or even if you've liked games like, I sort of think of it in this vein of maybe like an Uncharted game from back in the day, sort of that, linear action adventure story, but probably 007 First Light's got a better story than some of those Uncharted games, in my opinion. So there's that. And lots of references to previous Bond movies and things like that. So yeah, enjoyable game. I'll be keen to check out any of their future Bond stuff, because I think IO Interactive have said that they're moving away from Hitman to now work on James Bond type of games. So that's good, because it's been a while since there's been any sort of decent James Bond game. GoldenEye was however many years ago now, wasn't it? So
Yeah, that's going back.
Yeah, I think it was in the 90s, late 90s. So
yeah, that was so good.
Yeah. But yeah, 007 First Light, enjoyed it. And I've moved on now to play Resident Evil Requiem. So I'll talk about that once I'm done with that game. That's it really for this podcast. Thanks to everyone that's listened to the end. As always, if you want to sign up to our Patreon and get access to the monthly, the bonus feed, we do have monthly live streams and stuff on there that's kind of unrelated to the podcast, but there is the bonus supporter feed, ad-free, comes out a little bit earlier on there if you're interested. Outside of that, we just appreciate everyone that listens to us on the usual YouTube platform or listens on Spotify or all the other podcast platforms. Give us a review if you're interested. I don't know what our review rating is, but I hear that's important for podcasts. So do that if you feel inclined to do so. Outside of that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.